What's up guys, it's Manga Time once again. I'm here to bring you my review of Bleach 606 Divine Division. Now I presume that title was referring to the Royal Guard because they are the Divine Division. But at the same time I'm not entirely sure because some of the events at the beginning of this chapter are really weird. But there's a lot of kind of heavenly references in the chapter, so maybe it's got something to do with that. At the end of the day, I don't think the title of this chapter is overly important. It's kind of a cool sounding title as well. We've got the whole div in there, which is a really cool sounding name, Divine Division. It's just cool, man. So we do start off, and it's a little bit annoying sometimes when Kubo does this because it can feel like he's wasting pages. But he like takes you back a little bit before what happened at the end of last week's and adds a little bit new in, and then takes you back to the end of last week and then carries on. But this actually does kind of give you some interesting insight. Basically, Ichibei's like basically pissed off because Yhwach's not listening to him. He's like, I tell you to not call my name, but you do it anyway. I tell you to reflect your actions, but you just repeat them. And then he says, I tell you that you've aged, but you prove me wrong again with your mischief. So that's my first point. And as he's saying this, Yhwach's snapping his arrow like he did at the end of last week. Now, before we move on to the next page, I want to just bring up the whole Yhwach aging thing, because it's something I've noticed and it's something a lot of other people have noticed. Yhwach looks like he's getting older. Like there's a bit of debate as to whether this is just an art thing or if he is actually getting older. But like, if you go back to 484 and look at his very first appearance, man, like he's got virtually no moustache. His face has like no creases on it, and he just looks a lot younger. In fact, he looks more like Zangetsu. Now, though, his moustache has gotten substantially larger, and I'm not just being pedantic here. It really is like massive. His moustache is just huge, and not only that, but he has like proper serious creases there under his eyes. Like when he sneers, he gets real wrinkles on his face, and he just looks a hell of a lot older. And we already know that Yhwach has a bit of a tendency to, well, not so much change appearance, but we know that his appearance is kind of reflected, his power is kind of reflected in his appearance. We know that when he was a baby, he was completely powerless. And we know that he obviously grew up to look like Tensar and then Zangetsu, and now the way he is. So to me, kind of, because we know this progression of Yhwach anyway, it seems logical to me that Kubo is making him older. I don't know why. Possibly to show he's getting stronger as he absorbs the dying Stermator's abilities. Maybe he grows older again. Because he looks really old after he absorbs Master Masculine's ability. When he's like, I thank the world that I can still see, or whatever he says. He looks super old there. So, that's just an interesting little thing to bring up. But then Ichibei's like, if you're not going to listen, I don't have any choice but to kill you. And he does the really creepy blank eye look that he does in the last one, where he looks like he's kind of drawn with a brush. As far as I can glean, that it's purely cosmetic, actually. It doesn't actually, I thought he'd do like an ability or something, but it doesn't actually do anything. Yhwach looks pretty nonplussed as usual, and then we get some more of the fight, and it continues to be really epic and really even, and just really good. Yhwach like draws his blade, and Ichibei draws his paintbrush, and they clash. But before we see any of that, we actually go back down to the Seirei, and this is where things get really weird and really interesting. So there's this character, and they're carrying something, we don't know what it is, but they're going like, oh, big sister, wait for me, big sister, and like, I was like, what is going on here? Because the first thing you see is a black sock and a sandal. And it didn't register to me immediately that they were wearing a sandal. I thought it was just a black shoe. And I was like, holy crap, it's an Orankar. Then I realised, no, wait, they're wearing a sandal. And I was like, what the hell? And then I was like, big sister. Ganju? Maybe it's Ganju? And like, Kukaku's already arrived. And then I was starting to get hyped for the appearance of the Fullbringers. But we don't see that person again for a little while. And then we see Urahara, and he's in front of a strange building that has somehow remained intact. And he's drawing a line in front of the building in, I presume, sand? I didn't know the Vanderite was made of sand. Unless he's literally cutting through the floor, perhaps, with the bottom of his cane. And he's obviously standing in front of this building, like I said. And then he gets surprised by someone going, what's this? Why are you scribbling out here? Didn't you do your preparations inside? And Urahara's like, well, I did. And then we find out that it's actually Hiyori and the rest of the Vizards from the human world. Yay! Because we've barely seen these guys this arc. And I love how Lisa's holding an umbrella and Hachi's holding an umbrella. And in Hachi's hand, it looks like it's really tiny. I think that's funny. but yeah, it's actually really cool to see these guys again, and I'm just so curious to know what they're going to do. Because Hiyori's like, where's Yoruichi? And then Urahara's like, Yoruichi's gone to the Royal Palace. And then, and I don't really know what's going on here. Hiyori's like, I bet you told her, right? But I bet she didn't have the answer right away. And then Urahara says, let's go inside. I don't know what the hell they're going to do inside. But Hiyori's also got like a bag over her shoulder. Again, no idea. But then Hiyori says that Urahara told her that they were going to meet up with Yoruichi, Ichigo and the others and then go up to the Royal Palace together, presumably to be a stronger force. And I really like this bit now, because there's a really nice sense of foreboding, where you kind of get the impression that Urahara is really hiding some stuff from people. Because Hiyori's like properly questioning him. She's like, well, what are you going to do if you've just let them go off and die? Or if they die, because we didn't go with them. I do kind of think it's funny that they think they could actually do something. But, Hiyori's kind of like, as she says, as long as they slow down the bad guys, you don't give a shit if they die, do you? And then he's like, what were you thinking, letting Ichigo and Yoruichi go? And this is basically, I think, at least, probably reaffirming pretty much what everyone's thinking, is that Ichigo and the others are not going to be able to stop Yhwach when they get there. So, yeah. And I'm actually quite happy to know that. But anyway, then someone else arrives, and we get a new character all of a sudden. It's completely random, completely out of the blue. But it's Yoruichi's brother or sister. I have no idea. But they're wearing Shinigami. They're wearing the Hakama, so they must be a Shinigami. And they've got like strange garments on. I don't know what the hell. I don't know what squad they're part of. Maybe 2. But since like Yoruichi defected, you'd think the Shihoin house might have fallen. So I don't know. But this. I'm just gonna call her by her name, or him by his name, which is Yushiro, and he's got a row at the end of his name, so it might be a dude. I don't know why I'm saying she, because honestly I think it's a guy. But anyway, he drops the stuff to the floor, and he's like, just when I thought I could be use after she contacted me after so long. And then Urahara says I had to let her go for the court. And then we find out the name of the brother, and he's actually the 23rd leader of the Shihoin clan, Shihoin Yushiro, and he's guardian of the heavenly armor. Interesting. Presumably that's what he's brought with him. And I've seen a lot of people thinking, maybe it's Yoruichi's Zanpakuto. Maybe, probably not. Just saying, I don't think it is, but it might be. That'd be neat. If her Zanpakuto was like a Shihoin artifact. And Urahara's like, yeah, what you've brought is bound to be useful to her, so come on in. So presumably these guys are going up to the Royal Palace. And Hiyori's like, oh, that reminds me, I hate it when you say we do things for the court. And that's basically just telling us that Hiyori does still hate Shinigami, even though they're all kind of buddy-buddy now. And I kind of thought, at first I thought court, I thought he was talking about the Central 46. I don't know why I thought that, but that's what I thought, and I thought it was like all part of this build-up to what Shinsui's doing. But then I remembered that Seirei is Court of Pure Souls, so he's literally just saying, we're doing all this for the Seirei, and Hiyori's like, I hate that. So yeah, that's that, basically. So, as for what's going on down there, I really have no idea. I don't know what Hiyori and the others are expecting to do. I don't know what Urahara is expecting them to do. I hope he doesn't pull some Deus Ex Machina out of his arse that just, completely screws Yhwach over. That would be so bad. But who knows, to be honest. Where's Ginjo? Where's the Fullbringers? Where's Grimjo? What the hell are they going to do, either? I presume Kuba's going to have these Vizards fight against the Elite Quincy, maybe after the Elite Quincy defeat the Royal Guard. I don't really know. It's actually very hard to say where it's going, and there is that slight worry in the back of my head that Kuba is going to skip over a hell of a lot of fights. But I really hope not, because we see he does still have it in him to do a really cool fight, because Ichibei versus Yhwach is awesome so far. So we go back to that fight now, and they lock blades, although Ichibei's using a brush. And they actually have some really interesting dialogue now. It's just a shame nobody decides to elaborate on anything, basically. And Ichibei has the craziest rape faces ever, man. He is a weird-looking guy. But Yhwach's looks like you've changed quite a bit. And Ichibei's like, really? And he's got this crazy-looking face on. And Yhwach's like, you look happier. Who would have thought that you would be happy upon deciding to kill me? And they start clashing again, and Yhwach tries to cut Ichibei's face. He dodges, and then Ichibei tries to hit Yhwach, to which Yhwach bats the brush away. His first mistake, basically. Because he then smacks the brush away properly, and I believe he actually hits the tassel at the top, or whatever it is, whatever you call it, the bristles. And he's like, there's a limit to how much you can change. Don't really know what he's talking about there. But then we find out Ichibei's ability. He says, so you've sacrificed your arm then. My brush can't cut flesh, but it can cut names. And then we find out that Yhwach's arm is being affected by something. And Ichibei says that now you've touched the bristle with your arm. It's now, the name of your arm has been cut in two, and now it's R. So basically what Ichibei's done is taken the M off the word R, and therefore weakened the power. We already know that Ichibei is the inventor of the names in Soul Society, therefore it was bound to be that names would play a big part in his ability, and it seems that's the case. It seems in Bleach what we're learning now is that the names of everything delegate the amount of power that thing has. So Ichibei has the power to, essentially with his brush, erase a letter from said name, and then whatever that is becomes weaker. So now the M has gone from Yhwach's arm, leaving AR, and it's now weaker. And Ichibei has another crazy face on him. But basically he's like, are you feeling more sluggish? Because basically you can now only do half of what you could originally do before, which is very OP. It reminds me a lot of Wabisuke, doubling the weight of things. But Ichibei's like, your attacks have just become so weak. And basically he slashes Yhwach down the middle, thereby effectively halving all of Yhwach's power, rather than just halving the strength of his arm. And after he does this, he smacks Yhwach straight back to the Royal Realm, and Yhwach hits his back on the path, and it looks super painful, actually. And he's just like, Gah! And he goes flying, and this is when we get really interesting bits now. Ichibei's like, Yhwach, old friend. And that's like, what? Okay. Please tell me more. Oh, you're not going to, are you? Okay, fine. But he's like, Yhwach, old friend. You, the head of the Quincy with half his powers left, and I, the loathed head of the Shinigami. One head of the Shinigami? That's really quite interesting. It's something we could have picked up ourselves. We know the Royal Guard are the highest authority under the king. We know that Ichibei is a Shinigami, therefore he's the head of the Shinigami. It's also interesting because that implies the Spirit King's not a Shinigami, but we need to know more about him before we get into that. Something else I just want to point out very quickly is that Yhwach is now back behind the line that Ichibei originally drew. So he's now back in the place where Ichibei said he would defeat him, so that's quite interesting. And then we get another crazy Ichibei face, and he's like, how do you feel being chopped into tiny pieces? And Yhwach just grins, and he's like, how do I feel? And he's like, do I look like I'm suffering? And he stands up, and there's all this light around him, and that's the end of the chapter. So, another really great fight scene, Kubo. You're doing these right now. This is what we want to see. We want to see these two behemoths just going at it, just beating the shit out of each other, but, like, nobody being too overpowered. Because even though Ichibei has kind of dominated this week, Yhwach's still not too phased. He still gets back up and he's like, so what are you going to do about it? And it's like, that's awesome. And it's like not like Ichibei's one-shotted him, like has been happening in a lot of fights. If this was a Bleach fight of the last few months, Yhwach would have dominated Ichibei last week. And then this week it would have all been Ichibei returning the favour and then finishing probably off Yhwach at the end of the chapter. But no, they're still both ready to go at it. And the final page is an interesting one because it looks a hell of a lot like Yhwach's about to use his Volstendig. Because he gets the ring of light around his feet that pretty much all the Volstendigs we've actually seen properly activated have got. Bambietta had it, Kurge had it, and I'm pretty sure that's about it for all the Volstendigs we've actually properly seen be activated, because a lot of them, like Asnod, Master Masculine, Pepe, they just kind of exploded into their Volstendigs without the Pillar of Light. So I would be a little disappointed if Yhwach uses Volstendig now, although I feel it's justified because Ichibei is like one of the toughest Shinigami ever, probably. It's a little bit almost early, I want to say, but maybe not. But having said that, it would probably make this fight even more epic, but it's a bit strange to me because we know that Yhwach still has Zanka no Tachi, and as far as we still know, you can't use a Volstendig and be in possession of a Bankai at the same time. So maybe he's just powering up. And it's not a Volstendig, it just looks a lot like it. But it might not be. And honestly, it would be a little bit strange, because Ichibei is beating the crap out of him, but Urahara doesn't necessarily seem to be in any real trouble yet. And now, we know that he has lost half of his ability power, which is a bit troubling for him. I can kind of see Urahara being like, now that you've taken away half my strength, we're finally on the same level. That sort of shit. I can see Urahara pulling that. So that might be interesting, but maybe he is needing to power up. It'd be very funny if he was about to Ausfallen the Elite Guard, because he'd literally just powered them up through another Ausfallen, but I digress. I'm really actually looking forward to seeing the Elite Guard fighting. Hopefully we do actually get to see that. But yeah, the fight between Ichibei and Yhwach is still awesome. I'm very intrigued by what's going on downstairs. Bringing in Yoruichi's brother, it seems a little late to me, like, just because Yushiro... I mean, because Yoruichi's a relatively major character, and then we suddenly find out, whoa, you got a brother. At the same time, it's not exactly unbelievable. She's in a noble house. They're a big family. So, her having a brother, not out of the realms of plausibility. Just don't expect us to necessarily get attached to him. That's all I'm going to say. But, you know, I don't have a problem with Kubo introducing these throwaway characters, because at the end of the day, it does help expand the lore. In a way, at least, it helps expand the lore. But that's it from me this week, guys. I'm going to drop an 8 out of 10 on this chapter, just because the fight maybe wasn't as exciting as it was last week. But, I mean, it was still very good. But we didn't have the fancy kind of Buddha hands that Ichibei was doing or anything like that. And we're getting an awful lot of questions, but, like, absolutely no answers. So I'm kind of feeling like we are moving towards this... I think something massive is going to happen soon. Like, crazy big is going to happen soon. That's pretty much going to just blow everything out of the water. Or at least I really hope it is, anyway. But, yeah, 8 out of 10. Let me know in the comments below, guys, what you thought this week's chapter. How are you finding the Ichibei versus Yhwach battle? And what the hell do you think is going on with Urahara and the rest of them downstairs? Just, like, that's a crazy situation. All these old characters coming together. What is going on there? Like, where are they? Are they going into a lab? Maybe they're going to see Aizen? Maybe that's the random door to Muken? Probably not. But, yeah. Let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen. As always, guys, please subscribe. I'd super appreciate it if you press the subscribe button up here and give me a like. But until next week, guys, see you later.